I want to thank y'all for joining us. Certainly a somber day of remembrance. I think it's always good to just kind of pause and reflect. I think, I've seen a lot of different things and we all reflect in different ways, but, this date always stands out. So thank y'all for being here and joining us for the CCTS forum. So really excited. I'm going to give an overview. I'm Mike Mugavero. I'm the director of the CCTS Training Academy. Dr. Kimberly, you want to say hello? CCTS director. This is kind of, we're in Dr. Kimberly's home. So I think kind of PCAMS is the home of CCTS as director of CCTS. So glad that you could be guests with us. For those that haven't been here before, welcome. Hopefully others have been around CCTS activities, programs, and feel very comfortable and familiar here with us. So I'm going to give a very brief overview and then hand things over to Greg Payne. So just briefly wanted to share some background about the CCTS. Hopefully this is familiar to many of you. You've seen this before. But the overarching vision, I think it's always good for me. I'm a very kind of vision, mission, focused, purpose person, helps keep me grounded in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it. But the vision, and if you go to the website, you see this, is to reduce the burden of disease and disparities in health outcomes that disproportionately affect underserved populations, including socioeconomically disadvantaged rural populations within our region. I think we've all seen these different maps, and whatever you're looking at, be it poverty, housing instability, any chronic disease, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, there's this concentration of disease, of suboptimal social determinants of health in the Southeast region. And the CCTS is spanning this region of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. So the goal is through clinical and translational science, can we accelerate discovery towards attenuating disparities, improving health, improving wellness, improving health outcomes. So this is our icon. Again, hopefully it's very familiar to all of you and you're familiar with the symbolism that stands behind it. I think, really a lot of thought has gone into this. The idea that each of these symbols represents a different component of the CCTS Training Academy. If you go to the website, it's actually color coded. So the research commons is that kind of bluish color, clinical translation, the special modules, our partner network down in purple. And again, you can see the icons of all the institutions down the bottom. Community engagement, as well as the training academy. And I've been working in the training academy, but just for orientation purposes, for those that aren't aware, when you see this symbol, a lot of meaning behind it. When you go to navigate different resources, different services that are available, I'm very consistent in terms of how things are presented and where to find them. So, we are part of this larger CTSA national network. You can see on the map, where the funding sites are and the kind of distribution. And for the larger NCATS program, through NCATS, through the CTSA, workforce development is principally one of the goals. And for us in the Training Academy, that is really our central focus and central goal. So we are working on translational science workforce development so that folks have the skills, knowledge, experiences to advance translational discoveries. And really training the spectrum from T1, from the bench, out all the way to T4, to communities and population health. And a lot of our focus is trying to work with interdisciplinary sciences, create connectivity spanning that spectrum so folks are getting outside of their lane, outside of their disease area, and really trying to enhance this idea of translational thinking. So I will say one of the things that we've done, we have training advisory committee meetings every year. So we have external advisors who work at other CTSAs come and give us feedback on our training programs, on the things we're doing. We can share at the website, posters, all the different trainings. But about a year ago, we had our last external advisory committee, our training advisory committee in this room. And, the parting kind of call to action was one of, you guys are doing a lot of great trainings, you have a lot of wonderful programs, but what are you doing to develop the workforce so that it's more reflective of the populations you serve? You told us your vision, your mission is to address diseases that are disproportionately impacting our region and certain communities in our region. What are you doing in terms of really enhancing workforce development so that the workforce of the future is more reflective of those that we aim to serve? And I had the really good fortune of going from that meeting here at about 5 o'clock, driving up to Nashville, as Letitia Alofre's mentioned. We'll hear from Letitia later, as part of the Robert Wood Johnson Harold Amos Medical Faculty Development Program. So a very prestigious grant program I saw the embodiment of translational science through this AMFDP program. And past scholars have included folks like Selwyn Vickers, Tamara Coyne-Beasley, so a number of folks at UAB. And what struck me was that there hadn't been an Amos scholar from UAB in a decade. So this is this grant program, he was here trying to identify, the brightest, the best, the most talented persons across this, spectrum of diversity. And we hadn't had someone for 10 years, and the thought was we could do something better than that. And hearing that call to action from our advisory committee. So talk with Letitia, talk with Greg. So they were both awarded the same year, first time in a decade since Jewel Halanich, and came together with, could we structurally have a group, have a program at UAB that helped to build community, helped to promote awareness, helped to promote recognition of programs like the AMIS program to really meet that call to action in terms of workforce development. And that led to this idea of Driven, driving research and interdisciplinary, vibrant, engaged network, a mouthful, so just Driven, and a logo there. And you can see kind of the different goals of this program. And it's just getting off the ground, it's just getting launched, but the idea of supporting, promoting DEI, faculty award recognition, leadership, representation in scientific advisory committees at the more senior level, DEI-focused foundations, society, federal grants for promotion and tenure, and importantly, to build community, to really kind of have and build a community that's broad, that's outwardly facing, that's open. And so Becky Ramey and I kind of helped get this started, but very quickly recognized that both Greg Payne and Bertha Hidalgo, who couldn't be here with us today in public health, were the right folks to lead this initiative, and have kind of handed off leadership with the support of CCTS, with the support of SCORE. And we'll hand things over to Greg, but in terms of what we do in the training academy, we focus across this kind of career arc, from graduate students in clinical training and T awards and F31s through postdocs, then the kind of NIH series of awards through established investigators. A lot of our focus within the Driven program early on, I think Greg will speak to this, is opportunities for diversity supplements from NIH, opportunities for foundation awards like through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, other foundations that can supplement and support the pursuit of these other training grants and other mechanisms. So Driven being this infrastructure and this kind of home, and there's many, many paths and career paths, but wanting to kind of be a resource and a common place that folks can kind of identify, and matchmaking with opportunities that are out there, with mentors that are out there to kind of identify career paths towards that goal of workforce development. So with that, I thank you for being here, and I thank Greg for his leadership, and we'll hand things over.
First of all, Mike, thank you very much for the opportunity to lead Driven, as well as thank you all for coming out to hear from us. I'm not nearly as eloquent as Mike, but I will try. So I want to give you I think Mike has given you an excellent kind of 10,000 square foot view of why we are doing what we're doing. Look around. Thank you. What I want to do is give you kind of the ground level view of why we thought this was important and where we really want to see this going. So as many of you, we all have different kind of entry points into UAB. I see some clinical trainees out there, research trainees, some faculty, mentors, more senior individuals. But I think in general, we all see UAB as a very vast space that is great. That's probably one of the reasons we all were attracted to come and work here in the first place. But I definitely have been overwhelmed at times by how vast this institution is. And I think it's a truism of working at UAB that you're going to have a time when you are surprised to find out that work is done at this institution that you had no idea was going on. And I think that, Mike has mentioned Letitia and I's application to the Harold Amos program. I think we both feel that we benefited from each other applying at the same time, because she tapped into resources that I didn't know about, and I tapped into resources that I knew about. So it's not until this process has kind of walked its way through that we kind of teased back and said, what can we do to kind of mitigate some of the noise and really hone in on some of the key aspects that are here at UAB. And so it's within the really structure of CCTS and what's been already established here, that we're really trying to have a targeted effect for those of us who are looking to, again, have continued professional and academic advancements. So the idea here is not just to survive through science by getting the next grant or getting the next publication, but to really thrive. And how do we, as a grassroots effort, really promote that thriving nature as a community? So our mission, again, I think really the crux is to cultivate that community. So what we had as an N of two, how do we grow that such that it has multiple contact points across the institution and across multiple schools and professions. And we look for this to be really an interdisciplinary and group of clinical translation investigators. And again, here, our big focus on this is to really increase that workforce. So again, we're open to everyone joining, but again, a key mission we feel like is to increase those going into diverse research fields and from diverse backgrounds, again, fitting with the mission of our institution, NIH, and much of the work that we do. Sticking with diversity, we're kind of agnostic as to the type of research. So I myself am in the T1 to T0 range. Many of our panelists are going to be in the T3 to T4 range. So we're open to any and all who are interested in translational thinking. Really paradigm idea that we've discussed at length here. But the idea again here is that we think we can benefit from each level of expertise and as well as each of our experiences throughout our training. So a cornerstone here, of course, is the idea of networking. So we don't get to know each other unless we get a chance to huddle around a beer or wine, whatever your poison of choice is. I use poison loosely, I drink as well. So, plan so far is to really have quarterly social events. So to give ourselves a chance to get together, just really have an open space to discuss what is career development, what is it like joining faculty? What is it being a more senior investigator who's looking to mentor? Really have an open space that really has no initiative or agenda, as well as to provide key focus topics that come up. So one, just as an example, the loan repayment program. I think in my experience, it's been finding the person who has gotten that award to help educate you on how to get this award. To me, that seems like a very inefficient way of going about it. So if you have a structured education or a topic about this for about 10 or 15 minutes. That's the idea, is to get people to a central space, enjoy one another, and then learn as we would typically if we were to just call up a friend. Again, Mike's shown this picture before, but many of us are on various steps along this pathway towards either very early career development to very senior independent funding. But one of the key things we look to do here is to try and demystify some of those opportunities. So with that, we're happy to try and provide the service of really a customized report. So you'll find out flyers that have been passed around with the opportunity to see more information about Driven. But the biggest part, and I'll have it at the end of the talk, is our website, giving you a chance to register, give us a little bit of information about yourself, and then let us kick back information to you about what funding mechanisms you may be eligible for, what you may have not thought about. For example, the Herod-Amos would not have been known to me if it weren't for my division chair sending it to me. So to try and take away some of this idea that you have to stumble into opportunities and really have a long, tailored list of something that you're eligible to apply for. And it's within that, so if diversity awards are something you can look for to really highlight that as a meaningful mechanism of receiving support and not really have the tail continue to wag the dog. Furthermore, so of course, matchmaking. So with a supplement, for example, it needs a mentor and a trainee that's going to be there. There may be a mentor who has a grant, is looking for someone to work for them, but is unaware of where to find that person. There may be vice versa, a mentee who's looking for some type of supplement or some type of work that's being done, but doesn't really quite know the mentor or what's available. The idea here is to link these two together, independent again of them having dumb luck to run into each other or just having mentors mention it, but really have an organized approach to linking this together, again, then tying into the resources that have already been well developed here. And then finally, Mugg spoke to this as well, is the idea of professional development. So I think if we identify that those who are having success, to really promote them, to identify them, promote them for national or local, regional, and national recognition, to really hone in on the idea of developing our diverse workforce. So identifying those who are most competitive and most likely to continue to succeed at UAB. And then also with support for promotion, tenure, and as far as continued growth in academia. So what I don't want this to be, I don't want you to take away from this, is that this is kind of more noise into the system. If anything, I'd like you to look at Driven as an opportunity to really reduce some of the clutter and to really allow us to help you align with your common interest, whatever that may be in research. And ideally to help you just get back to the work that you're doing, or to find the opportunity to do the work that you look to do. So with that, this is our contact information. So physically, we're located up on the 7th floor faculty office tower. It's through the official SCORE office. If you have questions, concerns, you can reach out to Aaliyah. She can throw her hand up there. Her email here is written up here, or Becky. Becky's also a very popular email address. And then our website is officially live here, so please go to the website. In fact, I'll show it to you here. Just to link on, and again, it's just 3 or 4 simple questions about who you are, what your background, and what your interests may be. And then we'll be reaching out to you from there to try and, again, provide some of this tailored information. So if I can ask from you, I'd like to hear from our panelists first. So hopefully if there's any questions or anything, we can address them at the end. But panelists, if you guys want to face the audience there. In no particular order, and I'll let them introduce themselves. We're honored here to have Dr. Letitia Olopre from Infectious Disease, Dr. Jessica Williams from our School of Public Health Professions, Dr. Faith Fletcher from School of Public Health, as well as Dr. Jeremy Gilroy, who's new, I think, assistant professor, newly minted assistant professor, congratulations, in physical medicine rehabilitation. So if you all don't mind, if you can just give a brief introduction as to how you came to UAB, what your work is like, what's your area of focus, and we'll touch base a little deeper.
All right, I might start because I might have to leave early. I haven't been to this. But so I came to UAB 2016 as a postdoc. Actually, I was, my mentors at UAB, but I actually started over at Lakeshore Foundation. That's where I started my postdoc. Working with him, goal was to submit a couple grants, get one funded, and I did. So the next year, I got a Craig Nielsen postdoctoral fellowship, moved over to UAB in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. I did 2 years there as a postdoc. Sounds like I did a sentence. So I did a total of 3 years as a postdoc, and then got to move into an assistant professor position in the same department. So I'm there still working with my mentor, who's over the UAB Lakeshore Research Collaborative. So that's part of the work in my journey through UAB.
Hello, I'm Letitia Olopre. I'm an assistant professor in the Division of Infectious Diseases. So I guess my journey, really, I was a resident here and then did fellowship through ID. You can do a research fellowship, where I got my master's in applied epidemiology. So that took 4 years. I did a bridge year as an instructor. And then when I got my K-23, I was promoted to assistant professor. My research primarily focuses on HIV prevention, and specifically how to increase uptake among young Black, gay, and bisexual men who have sex with men, and Black women, especially in rural areas.
Hi, I'm Jessica Williams. I am, on October 1st, will be an associate professor in the Department of Health Services Administration. So I'm really excited about that being behind me. I first came to UAB in 2005, and I was a research assistant. Then I started grad school, and in 2012, I became on faculty in the Department of Health Services Administration and Health Professions. Since that time, I've taken a few years to sort of figure out what my research focus would be, apart from what I did as a research assistant. So I landed on unconscious bias in healthcare. And so what my focus is on is understanding how the doctor-patient relationship and unconscious bias influences that relationship and ultimately outcomes, specifically in the area of high blood pressure management in African Americans. I've been funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's New Connection Scholars Program. In that study, we looked at urban African Americans and their perceptions of discrimination, because perceptions of discrimination oftentimes can feel like bias. So those two are kind of related. And so how that affected medication adherence in people who were hypertensive. Did a similar study as a PCOR K-12 scholar, which I currently am, that's ending in November. But with that study, we did a similar approach of perceived discrimination and high blood pressure in rural African Americans in Alabama and North Carolina. And I'm currently looking more at unconscious bias in ways that we can sort of measure its impact on high blood pressure outcomes in the clinical setting with primary care providers.
Hi, my name is Faith Fletcher, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Public Health here in the Department of Health Behavior. And I came to UAB in 2017, so my path is a little different. I was an assistant professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and I moved here for family reasons. So I think that could be a whole different panel on how to transition from one stage of assistant professorship to another stage. My work focuses broadly on HIV/AIDS related disparities. I have a particular interest because of my background in public health, health behavior, and bioethics, and also understanding how to engage communities of color, especially communities who are stigmatized and marginalized in research ethics. So that's where I am, and I've had the opportunity since coming here, which is why I really appreciate this forum, to connect with other people, other resources on campus so that I can move my career in a more ethics, public health focused way, opportunities for CCTS through the community engagement core. So that's really huge.
Awesome. I've got a question. I'll open it up and then hopefully just be as interactive as possible. But if each of you don't mind just telling us a little bit how your peers, friends, family have somewhat influenced your research pathway or decision, or if they have. And then specifically, if you guys have had the benefit of working in peer networks, what has that meant for you, or has that opportunity been there, and has that been good, bad, or otherwise? Whoever wants to tackle that first.
I think for me, it's been very beneficial to be in community network, or to be in networks with other colleagues, people that are like right ahead of me. It's always been beneficial to see their path. That's how I got to where I was. I went to some network meetings at a conference. That's how I learned about my mentor for my postdoc. I connected through them, and then came up, and then they just really helped me to navigate every step, always finding somebody that could, how do I fill out this grant application? How do I go to this training workshop or something like that? So kind of every step of the way, there's somebody that was just ahead of me. It always kind of helps. But even someone that's similar to me, they just have a different strength, whether they've done some training program or they've gotten some grant or something like that. So it's always been beneficial for me. Just, again, people, not just mentors, but again, people that are, colleagues at the same level.
For the K-23, it was very beneficial because I was able to work with people who had already gotten their Ks or had been scored and had summary sheets that they could show me and what their review panel was really looking for in regards to that the type of science that I wanted to do. And then, especially for the Harold Amos, I think, Greg and I really didn't have anybody within UAB that had contemporary knowledge about how to get a Harold Amos fellowship scholarship. And I think working with him, we were able to kind of abate some of the fears that we had. It was a very competitive process, and there were a lot of people doing really amazing science, and being there with Greg helped me feel more confident in the science that I was doing. And I think it made me better.
I think community has been very important to me in terms of helping develop my research career. There have been several instances where I've been applying to, especially Robert Wood Johnson or K-12, and I've reached out to colleagues that have also applied to similar mechanisms, and they were willing to share with me what the process was, some of the things that they wrote in terms of how to put things together, how to organize thoughts within a grant application. Also, I've recently taken part in the GRIT grant writing intensive cohort as part of SCORE, and that has really given us a community of people who are all working on Ks. And so we sort of were able to work through our challenges and difficulties that we had in putting it together, time management, all those things. It was great to have people to support you and help you through that process.
Yeah, as it relates to peer networking, I was a part of the K-12 program. It's a Birch Fellowship building interdisciplinary research careers in women's health. And That was a network of women, mainly women who had interest in women's health disparities work, and similar to what you were referring to earlier about exchanging applications. I mean, we circulated NIH loan repayment applications throughout that program. I was also a part of a Fordham University R25 program, and I found out about that program through women in the K-12 program. So again, maintaining those strong networks with women in that particular network has been really helpful for me.
And I'm struck by, I think, Jessica and Faith, you both had organized programs in some way. I know, Letitia, we may or may not. Jeremy, did you have organized programs that helped you identify mentors, or was it just who was immediately in front of you?
It was, I mean, it's like through the conference they had there.
Okay.
Part of the conference, they had the young professional development or something.
Yeah.
So they helped me identify.
So for those of you who did organize program, were there any barriers to kind of getting involved with that, or were there restrictions or any things that you can recall, or was it just very open? And what were your experiences kind of getting enrolled in those?
So for GRIT, there were no barriers to get into GRIT. I think they have a structured program that gives you a lot of insight into what is expected in different parts of a K application specifically. So no, there were no barriers.
So one of the barriers, and I think this is pretty common there with K-12 programs, I applied as a postdoc into this K-12 program. The feedback that I got was that I needed to actually be a faculty and immerse myself within the community at UIC. And again, I was competing against someone who already had these networks, who had mentors within the program. So that was a barrier for me because anyone's eligible for the K-12 as a first-year assistant professor. So I, attended meetings the entire year. Again, I, immersed myself into the K-12 Birch Fellowship culture. So when my application was submitted the next time, people knew who I was. They knew the work that I was doing, and that served as an advantage. So I would say that sometimes people know the people that they want to take part in certain programs, and that can definitely be a barrier.
So otherwise, and stop me if you guys have questions. The other thing that I was going to ask you is just do's and don'ts. So I think, all of you have been very successful, but I'm sure that hasn't come without its pitfalls. So for those who are looking to either follow in footsteps or, other stories you've seen, are there any suggestions you might have for the crowd as far as how to navigate some of these decisions of, Faith, you mentioned moving, for example, that always comes up. What goes into those decisions, and how would you have done it differently if you could?
I can comment. I know that for me, originally I was in a different vein of research. I was focusing primarily on STDs, and for infectious diseases, it's kind of weird where STD is funded from one branch and HIV is a whole separate branch. And when I decided that I wanted to go into HIV prevention, a lot of people were kind of discouraging about going into that because it was a lot more competitive. But it was where my passion was, and having someone like Michael Magavera as my mentor, it helped me, I think, to stay true to my passion. Because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's not worth doing. So I think that's probably my biggest do, is even though it was a difficult process, being able to do something that I love, I think was helpful in me becoming successful and actually getting funding. And the only other thing I could think of is trying to navigate family with this as well can be very difficult. So having people who were having some of the same difficulties with being married, and then anything else that goes along with that, was also helpful as well.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of going along with that, learning to how to say no to certain things, and learning that it's never too late to say no. You can always go back and have those discussions. I've had a couple of cases, one where LOIs were submitted to grant agencies, but I said I could do one thing, but then they do something else. And then just going back and just giving a firm no. Some people take a strong 2x4 no, and others will understand, more easily. So learning the language of how to say no, and learning it's never too late to say no. And also even what position they're in. like Letitia was just saying, like they could have, it could not be an interest that you have, but it could be someone that's in a position over you. You can still, talk it out with them. And because a lot of people do want you to do the best thing for you, especially as a young, early in your career and stuff.
I would say a couple of things. First of all, it's important to have both a sponsor and a mentor. By sponsor, I mean someone that's going to advocate for you, someone that's going to help you to either get on other people's grants or put you on their grants to help you write and teach you kind of how to conduct research. I will say that Andrea Charrington has been that for me. She's been very instrumental in helping me to sort of develop as an independent investigator. And also have mentors, people that will give you feedback and that will help you. Allison Hall in the room has been a great mentor to me. Also Ida Berner on my K application. So having a team of mentors and having as much feedback as possible when you're submitting something is very helpful. The second thing that I would say is don't be afraid of criticism, because if you're in academia, you're gonna receive a lot of criticism. Every paper that you submit is not gonna be published, and you're gonna get critiques back from reviewers, and they're not always gonna be nice. So learning to have thick skin and getting used to sort of no's from people. And also with grant applications, with competing with people, the best and the brightest across the United States, you're obviously not gonna get every grant that you apply for. So being comfortable with hearing no is very important.
Yeah, in addition to having sponsors and having people to advocate for you, you really have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And that can be very challenging as someone early in your career, but it also sometimes takes breaking down and deconstructing some of the barriers that make you feel like an imposter in different settings. So that's one thing that I've definitely learned. And in doing that, you have to understand what your worth is. You bring a lot to the table, and I think it kind of goes along with the passion piece. So if you carve out a niche and you're passionate about something, eventually people will begin to reach out to you because they have an interest and they recognize that you're an evolving expert in this field. So yeah, that's one thing that I think that, and then have writing partners and buddies. That's definitely key. Informally, I know we tried to kind of start a women of color writing network, and I think it's been helpful to identify protected time and protected spaces to really focus on manuscripts and grants. In addition to that, really having the social support in the network and these safe spaces to talk about some of the challenges that we might encounter. Again, thinking about the barriers to writing. A lot of times, there are things that happen emotionally and socially in the workplace that can really prevent you from powering through with the work, but you have to be able to do that in order to be successful in the academy. So.
For those of you that transitioned from one institution to UAB, did you ever feel a sense of isolation, of not having mentors, of not having people that are doing similar work? And if you did, then how did you find your people?
So yeah, that's a great question. Your research program in some ways can be shaped by the mentors and collaborators you have, and that can be very institutional specific. And I think that's something that I experienced. It took a little while. Some institutions have formalized mentorship programs. I'm in public health, and we're actually formalizing a mentorship program now, but when I started, there wasn't one. So I was assigned mentors, and I think, there's the being assigned a mentor and just a natural collaboration of finding a mentor that aligns with your research interests, as well as someone that you can engage with personally and have your relationship with. So I've been able to, again, work through that right now I'm actually working on a K. So it's helping me to establish what my mentorship team is and who has this expertise as I'm carving out my niche in a research program that's unique and true to who I am as a social and behavioral scientist. But I'm happy to talk about transition and further if you have questions.
I guess I have a question mainly for Dr. Lefray, Dr. Payne, it's in regards to.
I'm not on the panel.
Oh, you're not.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
Dr. Lefray, far as you're transitioning from like I know in internal medicine, kind of going into your fellowship and research. I'm still like a third-year resident. Transitioning, I'm planning on applying for fellowship that is very research-driven. How do you, as far as like aiming for that, being prepared to write a grant? Like, is this something that I should start to look for in fellowship, or should I start earlier than that? As far as like applying for funding for research ideas.
Letitia, could you repeat the question in the microphone for those who may be coming?
Sure. The question was, as you transition from residency to fellowship to faculty, how do you really identify mentorship and prepare yourself to go on a research track and career? So I can say for me, it was difficult. I did not understand what it meant as a resident to really do research. It wasn't until I became a fellow that I really understood the importance of, like you were saying, having a sponsor, having someone who's willing with their grant funds to help you get the education you need to do the research that you want to do. So I had an original mentor that paid for me to get my master's in applied epidemiology, which I recognize was something that for both internal medicine and infectious diseases physicians is kind of becoming like a given that you have to have before you get a K. I think it can be difficult if you don't go in with a plan. So if you're really interested in research, look at the institution, look at the people who are there that are doing funded projects that can be your sponsor. Because a lot of times when it comes to fellowships, unless you have someone who can help you pay for extra training, a lot of times it won't happen. I mean, what would you say, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me the biggest thing. So I did an MD PhD program. So my kind of naive approach to it was I thought I knew research because I've done graduate school and had published and had done the whole thing. And I think I came into it focused on science. And it's not to knock science or what the topic is, but I think you need to, especially for clinicians, you know, we're going to be matching other institutions. You may not be wedded to one institution, maybe moving. So if you have a choice, you know, I definitely, if I could have done it differently, would wed myself to the individuals. Of course, the risk there, of course, is if they leave, you know, that always happens. But the reason I say that is science changes, your interests change, but what doesn't change is how much a mentor will support you and be committed to your success in a certain arena. So what you think may be important now may not be important 4 or 5 years from now or when you go to write your first K. And so I definitely wouldn't say you need to find a topic of area that you're like, oh, I'm going to be this person right this minute. If you can find it, that's fine. And if it can match up with the person who wants to be your sponsor or your mentor, that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, you want to lean on the track record, the expertise, the motivation of that person, far less than, you know, what the heck are we working on? And that's something I wish I could. And the example I'll give you is I'm a cardiologist, but I worked in the lab, did postdoc with a group of pulmonologists and immunologists, none of which were cardiologists. So, you know, if I had come in the door saying I'm a cardiologist, I'm going to do cardiovascular disease, I'm going to work with these people, it might have worked. But I think I have excellent mentors because I came in with an open mind, and those mentors in hand had open minds about me. So that would be my recommendation to you is that, and then the best way, of course, is picking the institution that supports that. So don't go somewhere that's never gotten a K recipient. You know, not to knock those places. But,
That's very, no, it's very true.
yeah, I mean, like you want to go to places that have the track record, have some of these organized programs such that when you do land, you can quickly get integrated into the program and you're not beholden to someone liking you and like handing you their, you know, test notes from last year. Like it's not middle school. So those are the recommendations I give is look for that and see how people have gotten integrated, ask people how they got integrated into the system and what was their track record kind of moving in.
They brought up a good point about LRP. When you go from clinical where you're so structured, like you're told what rotation, what you're doing, and when you're doing, to a fellowship, and some of it is structured, but maybe you could speak to like the loan repayment program. I mean, at least for me, that was the foray of, oh, I could actually write something before I have to think about it. T32 would be a postdoctoral, you know, research grant. So I don't know, experiences with the T32 as you go from residency to fellowship. and that mechanism
Yeah.
of what it is, what the purpose is, and
So I was on a T32, which paid for my extra year in my fellowship program that allowed me to get my master's and to do the background research that I use as a launch pad for my K. The other mechanism that is wonderful, like you were saying, is the loan repayment program, which I would say was actually harder to get than my K, which I was so happy I finally got. But, you know, I think for all of these things, like you were saying, Greg, going into it, recognizing that you need to be around people who have track records of getting loan repayment grants and have track records of going through T32s, having an institution that has a track record and knows how to provide the training necessary for you to become a successful researcher is probably the most important part when it comes to career development.
Yeah, and one of the things that, I mean, I don't know the code to LRP, NIH or LRP, but I have what I think I recognize is that the protected time is really, really important. So when I started my postdoc, I had 1 year of funding, and my postdoc mentor was like, okay, you're on my tobacco funds. The second year, you have to find your own funding. So what I had to do was I went in and I wrote an R25, and I got the R25, and then I applied for the LRP. So I kept emphasizing over and over again, I have a 100% protected time, and I have 100% protected time. Plus, again, a track record of having all these postdocs and assistant professors in the department with loan repayment programs. So I think, you know, those things are really important as well when you're selecting an institution. That's, you know, part of what you want to do. You're interviewing them as well. You can ask questions related to their funding track record, LRPs, K awards, Rs. Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
You are interviewing them.
Yes.
It's not just that they're interviewing you.
right. I'll say part of it's like you might be alphanumeric student, like, okay, LRP, R25, T32. I mean, like, oh, that. So I think part of like with a program like this and through peer mentoring and networks is as you enter this new world, which is a totally different world, here's a network of people to engage with and connect with that are a few years ahead that have been down the path. And four very different paths, or five, you know what I mean? So, but being able to kind of have a community to come together and share experiences and hear what others did well, didn't do well, missed opportunities, I think it's part of the goal with what we're doing with Driven, so that as you enter this next phase of careers, there is this understanding of or transition to a new institution. Like here's, someone I can talk with that can give me the lay of the land, both at UAB, but also in terms of funding.
And just to add to that, I can't underscore enough, you're going to run into this in the clinic, and for anybody else there. The person you need to help you may not look like you. And I mean that in the sense that they may not be a physician, they may not be a clinician, and you're going to be surrounded by them. So if you ask them the question of like mentorship and they don't know what you're talking about, it's because that's maybe not the strength of that arena for them. But like many of them have done here, they've reached around to other schools. So the question of your mentor, for example, may be in the School of Public Health. They may not be in the clinic. And you don't know that unless, ideally from us, we're trying to help create that for you. But you don't know that at an institution or here unless someone links you together. So I think big initiative here is to try and dissolve some of that haphazard approach to finding things and make things more clear. For you personally, you want to go to a place that is able to offer you that and not, dictate that you happen to run into somebody.
Can I say one last thing? Well, first, I did one last thing. So yes, one of my co-mentors, which I failed to mention, and I apologize for, is in the School of Public Health. Her name's Janet Turan, and she is in the School of Health Care Organization. I always want to say health behavior, but it's not. Health Organization and Policy. And she is one of the reasons I think I got my K funded, because my K is very much focused on behavioral intervention development. But also, one of the things that's really difficult about the transition is the fact that you do come from a very regimented world. People are basically telling you where to go, what time to get there, when you're supposed to basically eat, drink, sleep, and then tells you how much you're supposed to get paid. And then you make this huge jump to having to negotiate a contract, having to find your own mentors, having to navigate networking, which can be stressful. And I think that that's one of the nice things about a program like this, is that it makes some of those obstacles a little bit easier.
You mentioned earlier with the family navigating work, family life balance. I think what maybe it's like this for other jobs, but what makes our jobs need all of our brains. So when you have life transitions and deaths in families, like it can be very challenging to keep moving ahead. And I think these networks, both informal networks, are very helpful. So if you go through a period of time where you can't write, you can't work, you have other collaborators that you can call, who can help to support you. I know I went through something pretty serious at some point, and part of what got me through is collaborators saying, hey, do you want to come give a talk here? Do you want to work on a paper? So I think these networks are important, both academically and personally, to help us overcome personal challenges as well.
I'm curious whether you've made use of or plan to make use of the faculty profiles in some effective way. I mean, I think but I think it can be a challenge, because I think a new person, a junior faculty, even if they went through that, is unlikely to necessarily just call someone forward. But if you're only relying on word of mouth and sort of who you know, then you may be missing the breadth of what's in the profile. So it'd be good if you could figure a way to utilize it that would really link up people.
No, I think it's an excellent suggestion, and we're happy to absorb that, because we'd like to get away from that to a certain extent. I think right now we're somewhat leaning on very senior faculty and people we know who know quite a lot of people. But again, I think the best institutions have depersonalized this and allow you to kind of search for this information on your own. So,
but I still think if you just wrote people cold,
yeah.
Although they do have that network with it, so like who's published with who, so you could use it for that.
But I think, like you're saying, to at least identify that someone is doing something, and then to ask around about them, perhaps maybe a good way to do it. So,
I can say the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is trying to develop a mentorship portal that leverages the information on faculty profiles, reaches out to faculty who would be interested in mentorship, and they try to set up a way that is utilizing new technology to say, I can meet you basically through the web. We can do some kind of speed dating. I know what you're interested in based on faculty profile, and this is what I specifically need help in.
And it's a good point in that, Becky and Bertha went and met with Dr. Dilworth, in the Vice President's office, and really great integration and synergy. So I think through the Driven is very much focused on workforce development and clinical translational scientists, tapping into other DEI programs on campus that are spanning schools at the vice president's level, very much on the radar. So I think the point of leveraging this being done effectively somewhere, how can we utilize that effectively to reach the audience that this program is trying to reach?
So the one question I think we've got time. I was just going to ask. So we've very often we are, assistant, congratulations, associate professors. Talking to people who are looking to kind of get to your point. Now, being in that group with you, I know we're also looking to advance as well. So what, at this position, what do y'all think you need? Because the idea, of course, is for all of us to be a part of this network as well. So as, junior faculty here or mid-level faculty, what are some needs that you anticipate that, your peers can share from? If you need to say it offline, you can.
What do we need?
What do y'all need?
I can speak for me. At this stage of my career, so when you get promotion and tenure, you, in some departments, are expected to take on a greater service role. And so, in some departments. So just really figuring out how to navigate keeping your research agenda active and finding the time to continue to write and pursue your interests in the midst of all the other responsibilities that come along for the things that
I've never heard that before. No.
For promotion in School of Medicine, they give you 3 areas where you can be excellent. And I'm trying to be excellent in service and research. And one of the excellence, I think, markers for research, at least, is becoming an independently funded researcher. So I'm trying to apply for an R34. And then I've gotten supplemental funding to hopefully launch an application for an R01, but I think that that's a very daunting task. Up to this point, it's been mostly career development and, I think funding based off of your potential. And now it's more so, what can you show me? What have you done? And having a national presence to get that promotion to associate. So I would need help with that.
I'm smiling not because you need that help, because I need the same help. That's what it is. So, go ahead.
I need help renegotiating my contract. Each year in public health, for most people, and it's probably like that in other schools as well. The amount of effort that I have to cover increases up until tenure. So it's definitely important to have collaborators who have NIH funding so that I can continue to collaborate. So my effort is very important to be able to meet the guidelines, the standards for covering a certain amount of my effort, which is why the K is so important. And that's also one thing that I learned. So at some institutions, Ks aren't necessarily, people don't always advocate for junior faculty submitting Ks. So it just really depends on the institution. I feel like UAB, part of the funding requirements and the demands, Ks are like all the rage here. And it's not the same advice that I got at my prior institution. So again, having the protected time to do the work, but also to be able to collaborate with other people so that I'm meeting funding requirements. And I think part of that, and I mentioned this earlier in public health, I think when people start their faculty positions, you might have a year of protected time, but then people may not know you because you're not visible, because you're just trying to work on your papers. And that can be both a blessing and a curse because then no one knows that you're there. So I feel like not until year 2, they're like, wait, you work in health behavior, you're a faculty here? Yeah, because I was just trying to get these papers out. So I think kind of like an introduction to, I think some chairs are now doing this, doing news articles on new faculty so that people know that they're there, people know what their research areas are, and then people provide you with more visibility and potentially more opportunities for collaboration.
And I know that you're working on the transition from K to R, which I think can be a barrier because one of the nice things about Ks are, you have all this protected time, but one of the bad things about Ks is you have all this protected time. And then once they want you to go to an R, you don't get the same effort on an R that you would on a K. So you need way more funding to protect your time once you become senior faculty. Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to point to you. Yeah,
but I do think that is part of negotiation as well, because I've heard from different people there are different ways to negotiate over the 3 years. Like some institutions give you 3 years, but if you don't know that, because you don't know people at the institution, you might undersell yourself in some way. So I think that's really important. Find someone who's already at the institution who can really help you to negotiate your contract before you get there, because a year of protected time goes by so quickly. That's just meetings. And then you're off to year 2, and then you think about mid-tenure. So the time really goes by very quickly. So you need to make sure that you're protected.
Well, if there's no other burning questions here, I do want to thank our panelists for donating their time to us, as well as thank you all for joining us today. If we can give them a short round of applause here.